Good morning. It is March 20th, and my name is Bianca. And if you don't know, and some of you may know listening to previous recordings, I was a member of the Gamble Nippert YMCA back in 2021, 2022 with my 9-year-old daughter, and we were sex trafficked out of the Gamble Nippert YMCA by Glenda Harris and a lifeguard named Zach. They stole some type of inheritance money from me. They lied to the courts, made false documentations. These people, they don't know me from a can of paint. And I also want to talk about my living experience at the Anna Louise Inn in Cincinnati, Ohio. I want to talk about the sex trafficking activities that go on at the Anna Louise Inn in Cincinnati, Ohio currently. I'd like to talk about yesterday. Um, the cartel, the Cincinnati cartel, has paid several Anna Louise female neighbors and um, quite a few of the Anna Louise staff to conduct this sex trafficking environment. Okay, and this is for blackmailing purposes because they stole my money and they raped and possibly murder. I know for sure they raped her, but I don't know if she's still alive. Okay, so they're trying to cover all this up, the Gamble Nippert YMCA employees. And one of their ways of covering this up is the Cincinnati police and a few Hamilton County judges have collaborated together a group chat. So there's some type of group chat that these individuals use to harm females and children such as myself, and they record images and videos and they sell them black market for money. Okay, and I'd like to talk about how they do this. So yesterday I'm getting on the elevator, and before I start, um, it takes a special trained eye to see the scamming activities of individuals, especially when we talk about residential property buildings and prostitution rings being conducted. Everyday normal activity may look normal, but it may be harassment, bullying behavior, such as what you find at the Anna Louise Inn. And I'd like to talk about that. And then there's one thing for you to be a bad person, you to have a nasty attitude. You're doing things to cause people to be unkind or unfair to you. But that is not the case when we're dealing with predators. We're dealing with people getting paid to start fights and arguments for the purposes of sex trafficking reasons. So I'd like to go into my experiences. The neighbors. There are several female neighbors who do harassing, bullying behavior at Anna Louise. They make loud noise over the ceiling, very, very loud noise. Okay, and not they've even gotten more smarter with it now. Now they're using smaller equipment to make smaller noise. Okay, and they do this when I'm trying to go to sleep. They have surveillance in my home. So when I go to the bathroom, for example, and I know this sounds far fetched, and I know this sounds crazy, but this is what's going on. And this is how these black market prostitution rings conduct their prostitution, okay? Which leaves a lot of victims sounding like they're mentally ill, but the victims are not mentally ill, okay? Like, for example, the cartel pay Beth and Gordon, which are property managers, to be able to conduct what I'm describing, okay? So their maintenance man, Evan, installed cameras in my home. I don't know where they're at. I don't know how he did it, but I know they're in here, okay? And so when I go to the bathroom, for example, when I take a shower, I hear loud noises and it follows me through my home, okay? Because this is how they train the people who harass and stalk to target the victim, okay? So when I go sit down at the table to eat, I hear thumping over my head. Then in the hallways, they make loud, loud noise near my door. And they make sure to do it near my door. Now, it looks like they're just people in the hallway having a conversation, but that's not what's really going on. Right, they're doing harassment behavior. And every time I go near my kitchen door, here comes these loud noises, women talking, them scraping against my door, something bumping against my door, something weird, and that's cartel behavior. That's how they have. That's how they conduct their prostitution ring. Okay, and so I want to get back to yesterday. Um, I'm getting off the elevator, and here comes Evan and this light skinned black man in all white. Okay? Now, they look like they're just doing their job, but that's not what they're really doing, along with three other females who are harassing and stalking and doing bullying behavior. Like, for example, a couple nights ago, I was getting on the elevator, there was nobody in sight. The door was about to close, and this white female with glasses and curly hair, she ran all the way around the hall just to stop the elevator and get on. Like very aggressive, passive aggressive. Like you could hear her running. Like, so this is the bullying behavior that's going on at the Anna Louise Inn. And every time I go outside, there's a group of females that watch me on surveillance to make sure they synchronize when they're outside too. So this is, and then Evan does a lot of harassment behavior as well. You know, when I go outside, sometimes I'll see him outside, but the way he's doing it, right, it's intimidating behavior. Yesterday, I don't know what he does. He's a painter or something, but he works for the Anna Louise. And I noticed Evan uses a few contractors to help him do his sexual abuse. You know, when we talk about the surveillance cameras, the stalking, the bullying, the harassment, you know, all this is all synchronized by the cartel that they're getting paid by. Right. And this is not just happening at the Anna Louise Inn. This is happening at several properties around Cincinnati and perhaps America. This underground black market prostitution ring. But right now we're talking about Cincinnati, Ohio. And you know, you're listening and you're probably thinking like, well, why don't you just move? Why don't you just find somewhere else to live? Why don't you just pack up and get out of there? That's a good question. Well, number one, um, I'm in a battered women's shelter predicament. I just got out of being in jail from being framed by the cartel. So I had lost a lot of income. And so that answers that. And number two, this is the third apartment that the cartel has infiltrated with their prostitution activities, paid for by the Gamble Nippert YMCA. Why is the Gamble Nippert YMCA paying the cartel to kill off my family? Because they did some type of illegal financial dealings in the Hamilton County court system. The Gamble Nippert YMCA, a couple of Hamilton County judges, and several Cincinnati police are trying to help them cover the theft, the fraud, the false documentation, the lies, the false police reports. They're trying to help them cover it up by getting me locked up or to kill me. So that right there with itself, that goes into the crime ring the organized crime ring that is going on in Cincinnati, the theft ring. So these are people that steal. We're talking about multiple families within the Cincinnati area that steal, and they do it through having cartel and mob ties. Okay, so that answers the second question. So, this is the third apartment this has happened to me. And like I said, my resources have been hampered significantly. And so that's a shame that they're doing this to battered women that have already came out of abusive situations only to find themselves being furtherly abused in environments such as at the Anna Louise Inn. These are things that need to be discussed. They need to be brought out to the forefront. I am not a believer in keeping such things a secret underneath the rug. Um, my human rights being violated, I do not take easily. So I definitely feel like these recordings are definitely worth mentioning the activities that are going on. This is nothing to be silent about. And I encourage other people that may be experiencing things like this at their property, especially where you pay rent, especially where it's supposed to be your safe atmosphere, and to see and to experience such unfair treatment. I will make other recordings. I am going to cut this short, and it's been a pleasure talking to you all. And I hope you all got something out of this very useful. And to take care, and God bless.